is Histories and Mysteries. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Jessica. And on this week's episode, Ashley is going to be talking about some college ghosties.
Yeah.
And I am going to be kind of segueing from last week.
Seguing.
I was going to say that, and then I was like, worried that you were going to say something about me mispronouncing it. So, and I'm going to be talking about the American Plan.
Oh, this is the one I sent you that sounds really awful.
It's really awful.
Great.
So, I'm sorry, everybody.
It's my fault. I sent it to her, so.
It's very true.
Gosh.
I'm so excited for some ghosts.
Yeah, I decided we needed some more ghosts in our lives. So
I'm so excited.
Yeah. So I got my sources from 99.1 WFMK. It was like a radio station that had an article. Bestcolleges.com. Wikipedia helped me out a little bit here. Legends of America. Medium. Really cool podcast. She's also on TikTok. I follow her, called Avery After Dark. And my dad.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, so the first college I started out with, and the one that actually kind of gave me the idea for this, I do two colleges here. And the first one is called Alma College. And Alma College is a private Presbyterian liberal arts college. So it is affiliated with the Presbyterian Church, but my dad went there. He's not Presbyterian, but you can go there. It's just private. He went there for 2 years before he went to MSU. But this college was founded in 1886, and it's so small, Jessica. It has about 1,400 students. That's it.
I went to a university, and there was, I think, 6 people in my class, including me.
In your university?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. What university did you go to?
I went there for like a semester before I moved home. It was St. Stephen's University in New Brunswick.
Oh.
And then my university, there's only a couple hundred people in my class.
Oh, wow.
My one in Nova Scotia.
Okay. Well, I went to MSU, and there's a lot of kids there. 50,000.
Wow.
So this one, Alma is very, very small. So 1,400 students, but it has quite a few little ghosty stories of its own. So for those of you that are not familiar, because who would be? Yeah, Alma College is in Michigan, and it's like it's kind of smack dab in the middle of the mitten. So for my viewers, it's right like here. It's kind of like the middle and the like a little north. It's just very small. But the reason why I'm talking about this is because my dad went there, and one of his really good friends actually had an encounter with a ghost. So legend has it that there was a member of a fraternity there. They're called the Teeks, TKE. My dad was a member of the fraternity, and so was this kid, my dad's friend, who had this encounter. So years and years and years before my dad went there was a kid who was pretty muscular, always wore like cut off sleeves and like cut like his collar of his shirt and stuff like that. And he decided to go kayaking down the river that kind of goes through Alma College. And there's like this little waterfall. It's like a small one, but he ended up going over it and drowning.
Holy crap.
Yes. And since he was a member of Teak fraternity, they say that he still frequents that frat house. So they say that they'll see a shirt like his, like a sleeveless with the collar cut shirt, just kind of floating around. Many people have claimed to see that. And then my dad's friend, this is so creepy. So the fraternity got put on probation for a year. So
Why? What did they do?
I don't know. And so because of that, no one could live at the frat house for a year. So it was kind of like an abandoned building. But I mean, it was only a year, so it wasn't like crappy abandoned. Like it's and it was they were gonna after that year, people were gonna move back in. So it was kept up and it was fine. And my dad's friend actually would break into the house to study because it was completely empty. There was no distractions. Nobody would like walk up to him and talk to him or whatever. So he would go into this house to study. So one time he was there studying, and the house was, my dad said it was 3 stories, and they had like a basement, but the basement was livable. So people had rooms down there and stuff like that. So his friend was there studying, and he got there and he like set his books down and he heard the shower running downstairs. And he's like, oh, someone else must have like broken in and taken a shower and then like
Ew.
forgot to turn it off. So he went downstairs, he turned off the shower, went back upstairs. Studying. A little while later, the shower turns on again.
Oh no. Ew.
And he thought again, he was like, well, maybe someone came in, while I've been studying and they're just going to take a quick shower. So he went downstairs, looked around the whole basement. Nobody was there. So turned the shower off again. Before he got back up the stairs, the shower turned back on. Yeah. So
Oh.
my dad's friend grabbed all his books, left, and never went back there alone.
Oh my
Isn't that terrifying?
God. Horrifying.
Ugh.
Ugh.
So there's also a sorority house on this campus called Gamma Phi Beta that is supposedly haunted.
You people are weird
Why?
with your silly house names.
You guys don't have fraternities and sororities in Canada?
No.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't have Greek life?
No.
Huh. I did not know that. You have fraternities and sororities.
Not any of my schools.
Maybe you just weren't a part of them?
No, they weren't at any of my schools.
Maybe not. Yeah. Yeah, it says you have a whole bunch of them. They came there in 1883.
I don't know. A lot of them weren't. None of them were like really in.
Yeah, maybe they weren't that big.
Weird.
Interesting. Huh. We both learned something today.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so I thought it was way more prevalent for you guys when I was writing this. So let me explain for our Canadians. If you've never heard about it. No, I'm sure everybody knows what fraternities and sororities are.
House Bunny, thank you.
Oh, I love that movie.
And Sydney White.
Yes. So good.
Oh God, that's the only way I know about that stuff.
Yeah, so I was in a sorority. So I went to Grand Valley State University for 2 years before I transferred to MSU. I was in a sorority at Grand Valley. When you transfer schools, if they don't have your sorority at your new school, you're not allowed to pledge another Greek sorority.
So, question.
Yeah.
Do you request to be in a house or do they seek you out?
No, so they have what's called like sometimes I mean they might seek you out, but it's like they have what's called bid week. And if you decide you want to join a sorority or like a fraternity, it's like a big thing. And you go and you meet each sorority, and then like at the end you put like who your top sorority picks are, and then they'll put who their tops are, and if you match you get to be in that sorority.
Did you get into your top house?
Yes.
Yeah. Why did you choose them?
They just seemed the nicest and like down to earth, and I just really liked the people. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So anyway,
Okay.
so the Gamma Phi Beta house is also haunted. So there's this room in the Gamma Phi Beta house called the Pink Room, and it's just like where some girls live, and I guess it's probably a pink room. And apparently one night the girls who lived in this room woke up to see a ghost pacing back and forth from the closet to the bedroom door.
Ew.
They screamed, and the dorm president ran in to see what was wrong. She said as she opened the door, the ghostly figure glided past her and out of the room. Yeah.
No, thank you.
So like
That's horrible.
several people saw this ghost. Yeah.
Ew.
When the president went back to her room, she saw that everything she had on her walls had been thrown to the floor.
No. Ew.
But this wasn't the first time that these sorority girls had encounters with the other side. Ever since their house was built, they heard thuds and creaks, objects would move or disappear, light would dim, and doors would slam. And the only reason they can think that this might be haunted is because when they built this house, they think that maybe there was a graveyard or something under there and they disturbed spirits because that's when all this stuff started, is when they built this house. So,
Yeah, but okay.
yeah, I don't know. There's not really like a good like
But like if there
reason.
was nothing, if there was no house there before, like people aren't gonna really experience
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
anything,
Yeah.
right? Like how do they know that it only started when they built the house? Like
True, true, true. Good point.
so
Yeah, it's a great point. But yeah, there's not really like a good reason why. Like these next ones I have, there's definitely a reason.
okay.
There's also a hall called Gelston Hall at Alma College. And this is apparently haunted by Mary C. Gelston herself, which is who the hall's named after. She was the first dean of women. I think maybe like women's studies or like, not really sure what dean of women is, but she was the first there.
Uh, did it used to be like an all girls school or an all boys school
No,
and then it kind of slowly switched over?
no, not really.
Oh.
So I'm thinking maybe, yeah, maybe either something of like women's activities or like women's or studies or something. But
Yeah.
anyway, that hall is reportedly haunted by her, and students have reported being locked out of their rooms. Doors have like slammed shut, and someone even saw her standing inside their dorm room in the middle of the night.
Imagine.
Oh my
Imagine
gosh.
you're like coming home from a bender and then you forget walking like it's just like ghostly lady standing in your room.
I feel like, wow, I'm really hammered.
Yeah.
What are you celebrating?
I don't know.
Okay. A little like celebration thing showed up on Jessica's.
It's a ta-da. I don't know how to get rid of it. I'm sorry.
That's all right. So now I've got some really creepy stuff. So I googled haunted colleges because after I was talking to my dad about the story, I wanted to do haunted colleges, and I was like, okay, I'll probably have to do like 3 or 4. No, this one other college had enough. Like, so this is the most haunted college in America. And for those overseas listeners, here in America, we kind of use college and university interchangeably.
Yeah.
But traditionally, college is like a 2-year school and university is a 4-year school. But when I keep saying college, it's a university.
Yeah, I never understood that.
Yeah, yeah, we use it interchangeably. So okay, so this college is Ohio University, not to be confused with the Ohio State University, which is the really good football team that you always see in the news.
You guys are weird.
Hi.
Just like Ohio University, and then there's an Ohio State University, and
Yeah, there's a
like,
University of Michigan and a Michigan State University.
yeah, you guys are like very
Uncreative.
not, yeah, like come on.
Yeah.
Silly.
Yeah.
You silly gooses.
But well, and the stupid thing about Ohio State University is that they always call themselves the Ohio State University. Gag.
Awesome. Ego trips.
Yeah, they do. Anyway, so Ohio University is in Athens, Ohio. And like I said, it is the most haunted university in the US because apparently, up until 1993, part of the college campus was the Athens Lunatic Asylum.
Oh, I was born in 93.
Oh, so this asylum was a Kirkbride style asylum, which you may remember
Oh,
from Jessica's
okay.
story. And that just means that it was built and designed to follow the Kirkbride plan, which consisted of an environment of natural light and air exposure for the patients.
Yeah, the St. Elizabeth's Asylum.
Yeah. And then didn't you
Okay.
do
I did another one.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So this asylum was in operation from 1874 to 1993.
Ooh.
And it served as a place for Civil War veterans with PTSD, children, hysterical women,
Just
and
with some of the
other,
period.
some of them, and other mentally unwell people. Yeah, we're going to get into that.
My
So
people.
they performed lobotomies here, as well as as electroshock therapy, which obviously is not like it is today. They also performed hydrotherapy. They would restrain them, and they used psychotropic drugs that are no longer used today.
Yeah, it's like at a lot of those hospitals back
Yeah.
in the day.
Yeah.
They obviously sound the same.
Yep. The very first patient of this hospital was a 14-year-old girl with epilepsy.
Oh.
And they thought she was possessed by a demon.
Of course they did.
Yeah. Back in the day, epilepsy was considered a major cause of insanity. And in fact, when this asylum released their first annual report, 31 men and 19 women were there as patients because of epilepsy.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't have had the medications to treat that kind of thing. And
Right.
like imagine the kind of neurological damage that that would have caused.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
They also admitted those with alcohol addiction, tuberculosis,
Mm-hmm.
and menopause. Your face just dropped.
So stupid.
So 4 female patients hospitalized during the first 3 years of this asylum's operation. The 3 leading causes of insanity are recorded as I meant to look that up because I don't know what that is. Let me Google that really quick.
Wow.
Postpartum infection.
Oh, yeah.
Or like not infection, sorry, but like any type of postpartum anxiety, depression,
Yeah.
any type of postpartum. So there was 51 women there with that. Change of life. So literally they were going through menopause. So that was 32 women who were going through menopause and they're like, you know what? Insane asylum. And 29 women for what they called menstrual derangement.
Interesting.
Yes. They also had 81 men and 1 woman who was diagnosed as insane caused by masturbation.
Oh. Oh,
So there
okay.
was a lot of people there that were not mentally unwell, and they were still having these kind of like procedures done on them and stuff. And as far as burials, they estimate about 1,930 people are buried on this land. They say they think about 700, well, of that, 700 women and 959 men's graves are only marked by a number. So they don't know who they are. They don't have a name or a birth date or anything. It wasn't until 1943 that people actually started putting names and births on the headstones for this graveyard. So that's like a shit ton of years.
That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
horrible.
Yeah.
Also, on the topic of why women were put in hospitals,
Yes.
I have a list.
Oh,
Reasons for admission 1864 to 1889.
okay.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but we were
No,
just
this is
talking
awesome.
about it.
Yes,
So
tell
I
me.
thought it would be great. Intemperance and business trouble. Kicked in the head by a horse.
Okay. That'll do it. That'll do it.
Ill treatment by husband.
So your
Imaginary.
husband treats you bad, so you go to the insane asylum?
Yeah, you
Okay.
get admitted because your
Cool,
husband was
cool.
mean to you.
Cool, 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 cool.
Imaginary female trouble.
Oh my God.
Uh, jealousy and religion.
Oh.
Laziness.
Oh God, I'd be there.
Marriage of son.
What?
Fair. Yeah,
Like they married their son?
I think so.
Okay.
Uh, masturbation and syphilis.
Oh. Mhm.
Masturbation for 30 years. Medicine to prevent conception. Like you said, menstrual deranged. Mental excitement.
Oh my God. Don't get too
No-
happy.
novel reading. Yeah, reading a book. Nymphomania.
It's probably just she said, "Oh, I enjoy sex."
Yeah. Domestic trouble. Dropsy. Epileptic fits, like you said. Uh, excitement as officer. I don't know what that means.
And is this list just for this hospital or in general?
Just in general.
Okay.
From 1864 to 1889.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh, exposure and quackery or quakery. Quackery. I like that better. Exposure in army.
Oh, okay.
Fighting fire.
Oh, how dare you, you crazy lady.
I know. The war.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Time of life. I'm wondering if that just means that they were almost dead. Like
Yeah.
old.
Yeah. Old lady,
Uterine.
throw her in there.
Yeah. And like uterine derangement, venereal excesses, just like
Anything that's wrong with you medically or you just like in general, you voice an opinion, you're going in the insane asylum as a woman.
yeah. Yeah.
Great. So so by 1980, the state no longer took of the care of the graves. So obviously vandalism started to happen, and well, like normal natural decay took over. It wasn't until the year 2000 that the Athens, Ohio chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness took over and started fixing up the cemetery. And in 1993, and by them taking over the cemetery, they started to do research on people that were there because they didn't have names and stuff. So they wanted to figure out who these people were to be able to fix up the graveyard. And so that's where we learn a lot of this information. But in 1993, Ohio University bought the land and renamed it the Ridges. They did remove a lot of the buildings, but some of those buildings are still there, and some were new buildings were built on top of these buildings. So, fun fact, this hospital housed, and I'm going to do this guy later. I'm going to do the story later.
Okay.
But it housed Billy Milligan in 1977, who was a rapist and claimed he had multiple personality disorder, or what is now known as dissociative identity disorder. And he was actually the first person to use this as a defense and be acquitted for it.
Ooh.
Yeah. But get this. On December 1st, 1978, a lady by the name of Margaret Schilling, who was a patient there, went missing. They looked all over for her, but could not find her. 42 days later, a building caretaker found her body on the second floor of a ward that was no longer in use, and in fact had been closed for years. They said she died of a heart attack, but she was found completely naked with her clothes neatly folded next to her.
That's not a heart attack.
Right. So the other theory is that it was winter, it was December. And so they think maybe she got locked in there and died due to the weather. So, like, she froze, which then would kind of make sense if she froze to death, because you know how when you're freezing to death, like towards the very end, you feel like you're super hot and you take off all your clothes, which makes it worse.
Yeah, it was like the diet love pass.
Mm-hmm. So that might make some sense. But anyway, because she was there for 42 days, she started decomposing and she left a stain on the floor.
Oh, poor lady.
And they have cleaned it, but that stain remains. And you can actually go see it if you want, because they do haunted tours.
Ick.
Yeah, so many people believe that her spirit also remains there, and they have reported hearing a woman's voice in the area, seeing a shadowy figure, seeing her looking out of the window from the room that she died in. And those who work at the ridge say they see a woman walking through the hallways. So people have also seen other ghostly figures roaming the halls. They've seen figures standing in empty wings of the building. People say that they hear voices and squeaking gurneys.
Oh, that's the worst.
Yeah. They've seen strange lights and heard screams echoing through the halls. They have also seen and heard the remains of patients who were shackled in the basement.
Ew.
Yeah, when I say remains, that makes it sound like body parts, but just I meant ghosts. I was trying to be like cool writing.
I thought you meant like pieces of
I
bone and like
realized that
limbs.
I was trying to make it like cool writing, and then as I read it, I was like, that sounds like pieces of people.
How far away is Ohio from you?
Couple, I don't know. It's on my way to Michigan, but I guess it depends on probably what part of Ohio. Let's see.
I was gonna say we should go.
It is 5 hours away.
Oh, just kidding. We're not going.
Okay. This isn't even the worst. So, well, maybe it's the worst. We'll decide. But another area of the school is called West Green, and it is rumored to be built on top of a Native American burial ground. Students said they hear sounds of a river going through the building and chanting from Native Americans. There is also a dorm in this area called Wilson Hall, and it is hella haunted. So, first, it is said to be placed in the middle of a pentagram consisting of 5 cemeteries.
Oh.
Yeah. So experts say that like any 5 points on a map can be a pentagram. Well, yes, but this one's made of 5 cemeteries. Like, that's odd. It was featured on the show Scariest Places on Earth, and they called that episode Satan's Dormitory.
Oh, I thought they were gonna call it Satan's butthole.
Why did they call it that?
I don't know.
That's hilarious. Oh, I love that. All right, so Satan's dormitory, not Satan's butthole, although apples, oranges. So in 1970s in Wilson Hall, this was the first co-ed freshman dorm there. So it had, they said, the first floor and the 4th floor were for the boys, and the 2nd and 3rd floor were for the girls. And one year, a male student had been assigned to room 428. But he didn't live there long because he died in this room.
Oh, no.
And no one's ever been able to come up with a reason or a cause of his death, but it was mysterious in nature.
How crappy would it be to die at school
Yeah.
and have to like relive school over and over again?
Yeah. Then a few years later, a girl moved in there. So at this point, they must have switched up the dorm settings. And it was said that she was practicing witchcraft. So I guess like the evil kind, not like Wiccan. And she was also trying to do astral projection.
Oh,
And for those of you that don't know, that's where your kind of spirit leaves your body and goes to like a different plane. She was trying to do that.
yeah.
And she said she was using the energy of the room to talk to dead people and stuff like that. She was also found dead in this room, reportedly from slitting her wrists.
What?
Yeah. So apparently both of these deaths were, they said, violent deaths. So I don't know much more about that boy's death, but apparently it was kind of violent and mysterious. And after this, anyone who moved into the room would hear voices. Things would fly across the room and slam into the wall. They heard whispering. And if they ignored it, they would start screaming the voices.
Oh, it's horrible.
This gives me the chills. The door to the room would open and slam shut. This isn't the one that gives me the chills, but
Oh.
they also reported seeing the girl who died in the room. Like people said they saw her. This is the part. So apparently they would find demonic faces in the grain of the wood on the door. And sometimes they would even be scratched into the door. So the university thought it was like a student doing it and they replaced the door, but it showed up on the next door. And the next door.
Ew.
So eventually the university feared another student would die in that room and they sealed it shut. The door doesn't open, the window doesn't open, and as far as we know, no student has been in that room since. It's actually the only room that has ever been sealed shut in a college due to paranormal activity.
Wow.
Yes. But sealing the room didn't stop the activity. Students who live next to the rooms in 428 or live in that hall report haunting activities. They hear unexpected noises and footsteps coming from room 428. Students have said that they see ghosts throughout the hall and they've heard scratching on their own doors, as well as have had objects thrown about, doors open and shut, TVs and microwaves will turn off randomly. One resident said that one night she had set her alarm for 3 a.m. because her roommate was going out partying and like she knew, okay, she'll be back by 3 a.m. I can wake up, make sure she's like here and okay, and then go back to bed, which what a great roommate.
Yeah.
So her alarm went off at 3. She turned over, saw like feet sticking out from the blanket. So she was like, oh yeah, okay, my roommate's back. Everything's fine. Turned over and went back to sleep. The next morning she woke up and her roommate walked in the door from being out all night.
Ew.
And those are my college ghosties.
When you're I really liked that story. It's horrifying
Yeah.
because ew. But when you were talking about her being a really good roommate, I our dorm, like our door, like our rooms, we shared them. And it was basically just like a big open room, and then one side had a bed and a desk, the other side had a bed and a desk. Like it wasn't big.
Yeah, that's kind of how our dorms were.
And we were drinking one night, and I friggin' like the doors lock automatically when they close.
Okay.
And apparently my roommate had been knocking on the door trying to get in, but I was passed out.
Oh no.
And so she slept in our like common room.
Oh no.
But apparently she's been knocking trying to get in, and I'm like, let's the fuck out on our bed.
So you're the
True.
shitty roommate.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But no, thank you for the ghosts because we don't have
Yeah,
them very often now
we
that Rochelle's
don't.
gone. So I enjoyed that. Like, what do you think would be the worst thing to experience other than the demon door?
I think the scratching,
Yeah.
because that's so like not human,
Yeah.
like scratching on the door. Little.
I think for me, it would be the shower thing,
Oh, yeah.
especially because like you go to investigate and like nobody's there.
Yeah.
And it's already like a spooky place to be because it's abandoned. You're all
Yeah.
alone. It's dead ass quiet. And it's just,
And then it turns on again before you get to the top of the stairs. So like whatever
yeah.
is there
And
right
it's
now.
mocking you at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. Oh. Ugh. I just got goosebumps.
Sorry. Okay. So I'm going to start.
Okay, let's do this awful, awful story.
It's your own fault.
It's my own fault. I have no one to blame but myself.
So I used history.com and time.com.
Ooh.
Okay. Okay. This is the quote unquote American plan. A little known but widely used government program in America throughout much of the 20th century imprisoned people without charge or trial for having STDs and then made them endure harmful, deadly treatments. That is, if they were female.
Not males. They didn't do it to males.
It did not do it to males.
Oh my God.
Consider the roughly 24 women who were apprehended by law enforcement on a single day in 1919 in Sacramento, California. One of them, Margaret Hennessy, was detained as she walked with her sister to the meat market. It was clear. It was a winter morning. Sorry, lost my page. It was a winter morning, and there was a light breeze on Tuesday, February 25th. Hennessy had been staying in town to recover from influenza at the home of her sister, Mrs. M. Braddock, who was only known in journalistic stories. Hennessy and her husband, H.J., a standard oil foreman, resided in Richmond, California. So do with that information what you will. I don't know where any of that stuff is. Officer Ryan and other members of Sacramento's Morals Squad, so lovely, a team established that very morning with the mission of purging the city of vice and immorality, approached the two women as they were making their way to the market. The two women who were traveling alone were informed by the police that they were being detained as suspect characters. They were just walking down the street.
How did they decide? You'll probably get to it, but like, how did they figure out like to pick them?
They were just walking down the street. They were alone. They were two women by themselves.
Okay.
There's literally no rhyme or reason.
Got it. Okay.
It's horrible. Mrs. Hennessy made an effort to introduce herself and explain why she was in Sacramento. She offered to provide the authorities with her identity. She informed the cops that if they detained her, someone would have to take care of her 6-year-old son, who was enrolled in a nearby convent. The police didn't care, though, and escorted the two women to the hospital for tests. The moral squad took Hennessy and Braddock to the Canary Cottage, which was the city's isolation hospital. Why would you need to bring them to an isolation hospital? I have no idea. A doctor examined the two women's genitalia there for sexually transmitted diseases by poking and prodding them. Quote, at the hospital, I was forced to submit to an examination just as if I was one of the most quote, at the hospital, I was forced to submit to an examination just as if I was one of the most degraded women in the world. I want to say I have never been so humiliated in my life. Unquote.
So
Mrs.
they just picked two random women and they're like, here, come with us, and then basically sexually assaulted them.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Hennessy continued to say to the local newspaper that her reputation meant something to her and she was going to defend it.
Good for her.
Like, they created that squad that morning and then just walked out onto the street and found two women.
Wow.
Yeah. The experience Margaret Hennessy had was not at all rare because the American plan, of which she was most likely unaware, was the reason for her detention. Tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of American women were arrested and subjected to forced STI examinations from the 1910s through the 1950s.
Oh my gosh, through the 1950s?
And in some cases into the 60s and 70s.
Oh, oh my gosh.
The operation was based on comparable ones in Europe, where law enforcement followed suspect women and detained, interrogated, and tested them. So it wasn't just you guys.
But these women weren't even suspect. I mean, not that makes it any better because, you know, obviously, but these women weren't suspected of anything, right? They were just random women.
Yeah.
Wow.
They just looked suspect, probably because they were walking down the street by themselves.
Walking down the street without a man?
By themselves? Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
How dare they? That was a good one. If the women tested positive, American authorities imprisoned them without giving them a fair trial. While many program records have since been lost or destroyed, involuntary detention of women might last anywhere from a few days to several months.
Well, what I don't understand is they weren't breaking a law. Even if they had an STI, they're not breaking. There's no law that says you can't have one.
I know.
So, like, what was? How?
They were just trying to clean the streets. Yeah, it's brutal. Records reveal that the women were frequently compelled to take arsenic-based medications, and it's not even the worst part, and had mercury injections inside these institutions, which were the most common syphilis treatments in the early 20th century.
So then they would go mad from the mercury and be sent to an insane asylum. Cool. Yeah.
These women may be thrashed, doused in cold water, placed in seclusion, or even sterilized if they misbehaved or failed to demonstrate correct ladylike deference.
Oh my God. This is way worse than I thought it was going to be.
Deference or deference?
I think deference.
Okay, cool. During World War I, the federal government launched the American plan to stop soldiers and sailors from acquiring STIs. There you go. I forgot about this. I researched this like 3 weeks ago. Anyways.
So they did do it to men, but to soldiers and sailors.
They did it to women to prevent it from happening to men. Yeah, because apparently men don't spread STIs, only women do.
Of course.
Federal officials were appalled to find in 1917 that a sizable portion of men in the military, some accurately believed 1 in 3, were infected with syphilis or gonorrhea. These illnesses now constituted not only a health hazard, but also a menace to national security.
Oh. Mhm.
As a result, lawmakers enacted a federal legislation that made it illegal to perform sex acts within 5 miles of any military training facility located in the nation.
Is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So go 6 miles. They're gonna
Not,
get there. Is like what?
not the mercury injections.
Well, yeah, that too. Okay. I take that back.
They attempted to extend this ban to the entire country after learning that the majority of inflicted soldiers and sailors actually acquired their STIs back in their hometowns. They also expanded the program after learning that the majority of the women who were believed to have infected the men weren't working as prostitutes.
I like how it's that the women infected the men,
I know.
not
I was
that
about to
we
say that
infect
too.
each other.
Yeah. Like, oh, you have a bunch of men being infected. It's just the women.
Yeah. Yeah. Takes two to tango there, buddy.
Yeah. So, starting in 1918, federal officials pushed all 50 states to enact a model law that allowed them to forcefully investigate anyone they reasonably suspected to be in possession of an STI. According to this law, anybody who tested positive for an STI might be imprisoned until they were no longer contagious. The law was gender neutral on paper,
Uh-huh.
but in reality, it almost entirely concentrated on controlling women and their bodies.
Yeah, for sure. Give us a couple years and we might be back there in the United States, but you know.
Yeah. At least you know what the law is now.
True. True,
What the
true, true.
plan is. In high places, the plan received complicity, if not outright backing. Fiorello LaGuardia, the mayor of New York, praised the plan in speeches.
Ew. There you have the LaGuardia Airport.
I know. While Earl Warren, the governor of California at the time, personally oversaw its implementation in his state. In 1918, the Attorney General personally wrote to each U.S. attorney in the country, assuring them that the statute was lawful. He also wrote to each U.S. district court, encouraging them not to interfere with its implementation.
Ooh. There is no way that is not against something in the Constitution.
Yeah. I mean, this whole thing is just terrible. So.
Yeah.
STIs were a despised plague, and sex workers who were frequently mistakenly accused for spreading the majority of STIs were popular scapegoats. By 1921, every state in the Union, as well as hundreds of towns, had passed one of these laws.
Oh my gosh.
Towns and states intermittently enforced these rules during the next half century.
I can't believe that it went to the 50s.
I know.
That's insane.
Sacramento was one such city. Officer Ryan and the rest of the morals squad had a busy morning, and Margaret Hennessy and her sister were not the only ladies arrested that day in 1919. According to city police records, they detained Mrs. M. Sodfried about 9:25 a.m. on reasonable suspicion of possessing an STI.
Okay. How do you have reasonable suspicion of this? It's not like you can see it.
I know.
So
Especially syphilis.
Yeah. So it's just like what, being female?
Yeah.
I mean, you do
Probably
have
by
like
herself.
the syphilis nose that you get, but that's, I think, like well into the disease.
Yeah. I just remember that episode from like Grey's Anatomy where the one person had syphilis and they like didn't know and they were super old. I don't know, but it was just like they couldn't tell other than they had like memory
Yeah.
loss. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It's stupid.
It's just like, I saw Hennessy's ankle. She must be a slut and have an STI because only
Yeah.
sluts get STIs.
She rouged her knees.
Oh my gosh.
I know. 40 minutes later, they had arrested another woman, Lena Rosareni, on the same charge. Then there were the identical arrests of three women identified only as Mrs. J.S. Smith, Mrs. Butterworth, and Mrs. R. Nichols. Hennessy and Braddock were Ryan's fifth and sixth STI arrests of the morning.
They really went hog wild that day.
It was a sweep. On February 25th, the Morals Squad arrested 22 women, all for suspicion of STIs.
Oh my God.
Yet, because Margaret Hennessy was the only one of these ladies who made a statement to the press, her tale stands out above the rest. Officers released Hennessy and Braddock around 8 p.m. with orders to appear in court the next morning after STI tests revealed that none of them had an STI. Hennessy went into court at 9:30 a.m. ready to defend herself, but she had absolutely zero chance to do so, she told the Sacramento Bee.
Wow.
She was notified that the charges had been dropped, yet the arrest had an impact.
Yeah.
I dare not go out on the streets for fear of being detained again.
Yeah, I don't blame her. And I'm thinking
It's
about
so sad.
those women that, did test positive for an STI. Like, they're probably not going to want to defend themselves because they're not going to want to draw attention to it, because back then it was probably very, well, I mean, obviously it was very scary to have one.
It was very frowned upon.
Yeah.
In reality, Hennessy and Braddock were among the 16 women jailed on suspicion of STIs who were freed later that day. 6 were detained overnight and were not permitted to communicate with or contact anyone. And only one of the 22 women tested positive for an STI.
So it was a successful sweep.
Yeah. The police, the Bee noted, was only justified in arresting one woman out of 22 suspects submitted to a very forced and personal examination.
Yeah.
Actually, though, none of these were justifiable.
No.
Like, come on.
Yeah. Even if you have like 75 STIs, like, that's not okay. Like,
Yeah. Like, you can really clearly tell that the American plan was a shockingly sexist policy that had no place in public health.
yeah.
Under this legislation, women made up the majority of those who were searched and imprisoned. So you cannot tell me that it was gender neutral.
Yeah. Yeah.
One woman in 1942 was arrested on suspicion, and she was fined $10 after she pled guilty, just that she could get the court like done with, essentially.
Yeah.
Even after she paid her fine, she was tested and supposedly found to have syphilis and gonorrhea and then was detained.
Oh my gosh.
However, the ambiguous definition of reasonable suspicion allowed authorities to essentially imprison any woman that they desired. Archives have records of women being arrested and interrogated for a variety of reasons, including eating alone in a restaurant,
Oh my gosh.
changing jobs, being with a man, walking down the street in a suspicious manner to a male official, and frequently, no reason at all.
That's awful.
Exposés show that many women were also imprisoned if they refused to have sex with police or health officials.
Ah, yeah, that makes sense. I can see that definitely going there. Ugh.
In the late 1940s, San Francisco police officers occasionally threatened to vag, which was have women's genitalia examined, if they refused to comply with sexual requests. Women of color and immigrant women in particular were targeted and subjected to worse violence once they were imprisoned.
Oh.
The civil rights movement, the women's liberation movement, and the sex workers' rights movement all gained momentum in the 1970s, which marked the end of the American plan's implementation.
Can't believe it took till the 70s to end it.
Mm-hmm. Although it persisted for half a century in many places today, 50 years later, very few people have ever heard of it.
Yeah, I had never heard of it until I saw like a quick video or TikTok or something on it, which it's surprising that we've never heard of it because this is awful.
Awful. Awful. Even fewer people are aware that every state in the country still has some form of the American Plan regulations, which were passed in the late 1910s and allowed authorities to investigate persons who were merely fairly suspected of having STIs.
That's terrifying that it's still on the books, especially with the way we're going right now.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you think of the R versus Roe versus
Yeah.
Wade.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Laws originally approved under the plan were cited in the 1980s and 1990s to support the planned quarantine of another group of people with a stigmatized infection, HIV and AIDS.
Oh my God.
In certain regions, the plan was still being enforced by officials as late as the 1970s. Each of these laws is still in effect today to some capacity. Each state still has the authority to investigate reasonably suspected individuals and isolate the sick ones if health official judges deem that isolation is essential.
Wow.
Several of these laws have been modified or amended, and some have been incorporated into larger public health acts. Several women imprisoned under the American Plan made attempts to flee the detention centers where they were housed.
Yeah.
Another woman, it's horrible, jumped off a moving train to try to avoid being imprisoned,
Oh.
while at least one woman jumped out of a window to her death.
Oh my gosh.
Others would rebel and demolish their prisons. Many of them would set these structures on fire. And others would engage in hunger strikes or use the media to draw attention to the circumstances of their suffering.
Yeah.
And that is my story.
That's awful. And it's crazy that I had never heard of that.
Mm-hmm. So, thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah.
Uh,
Those poor women.
Truly awful.
Yeah.
But I do think it's important that we bring that to light.
Yeah, for sure. I think so as well. It's awful, but they deserve to hear their story, to have their story told,
Yeah.
you know? Okay, I have a couple jokes for you. Are you ready?
Whoa, you never have jokes for me.
I know. I have a couple.
Okay.
Why can't you hear the pterodactyl going to the bathroom?
Because the P is silent.
Yeah. uh what would bears be without bees?
Ears.
Yeah.
I'm actually getting these today.
What do you call a pile of cats? I feel like we've done this one, but I really like it.
A meowton.
A meowton. Oh. Okay, I have one more.
Okay.
Where do polar bears keep their money?
In the icebox?
In a snowbank.
Oh,
I love it.
cute.
Well, if you want more of us lovely ladies, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
And if you would like to rate and review us, you can do so on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to bringing you 2 new stories next week.
Bye.
Bye.